Praise the Lord, everybody. To God be the glory for the wonderful things that he has done. It's your boy, Pastor J.C. Howard here, and I'm grateful to God to be able to come to you live. Even right now, we want to just continue to do ministry, even during this pandemic. And I'm grateful because today I have two of my beloved brothers with me from the Macon area. I have my brother, Pastor Jarvis Adside. This man of God is absolutely insane preacher, and I'm grateful to God for him. He pastors the St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church right here in Macon, Georgia. And I have my beloved brother, Charles Phillip, man, my main man, another dynamic preacher. I invite you all to just look them up on Facebook, social media, Instagram, connect with them and connect with their ministries. We're three ministry. He pastors Green Pasture Baptist Church there in Millersville. And I am just grateful to God to be connected to these brothers, all millennials. And we just are trying to do ministry effectively, even in this season. And that's the reason why we've congregated and why we're coming to you right now, because it's important for pastors and it's so important for people to understand what pastors are dealing with and the weight that we're even carrying, even trying to continue to do ministry while all of this is going on. And so I invited them, and we had a cohort, a conversation, and we said, listen, we just want to convey to our people, the people of St. Luke, House of Hope, Macon Nation, Green Pasture, and anybody else who's willing to listen. We just want to convey as young pastors in the city that are pastoring just wonderful churches, what we're going through and what we're dealing with, and how pastors are posturing themselves and trying to make sure we're still doing effective ministry, even in this age. And so I'm grateful to God to have you brothers, and I am thankful that we're able to have this conversation today because it's important. We want everybody to know that as pastors, we really miss our people. And not that we don't just miss our people, but we miss the energy. We miss the energy. And it's hard standing in front of a camera, just preaching. And it's hard just standing in front of a camera in an empty sanctuary, teaching and preaching the word of God. And so, child of God, I want you to make sure that you log on to their ministries. I want you to find them on Facebook and Instagram. But listen, we're going to get right into it, man. We have a couple of questions that we're going to deal with and that we're going to lift up. And I pray that this encourages some pastor out there. I also pray that it encourages any of our lay members to know that the pastors have the heart of the shepherd and that we really, really miss our people. And so I'm going to start with this question, Jarvis. I'm going to just throw this at you first. How have these adjustments during this COVID-19 pandemic, how have the adjustments impacted the way that you do ministry now?
Pastor Howard, let me first start off by saying thank you for the invitation to share and to be able to discuss the importance of leadership as well as maintaining our platform of influence while leading people through this pandemic, through this crisis. So thank you. Blessings to you as well. One of the things that it has majorly impacted my life as a leader, because it has again shine some light on the importance of making sure that we are serving all generations in our church.
That's good.
And so say at St. Luke, we have 5 generations that are in our church. And so imagine a ministry where we are only catering to one demographic of people. And so now when you talk about ministry, doing ministry in the 21st century, you have to embrace this use of technology.
Facts.
And so, but for my older members, those who identify with being 55, my congregation, most of them are over 55 and up. And so when you talk about Facebook, when you talk about YouTube, when you talk about Twitter and Snapchat, it's sort of like for them, this is scary.
Right.
However, it is my responsibility as a shepherd to make sure that I still get them the word. Yeah. So it has impressed upon my heart to make sure that we have systems in place, not only during a pandemic, that ministers to all generations of people in the church.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. Yeah. You want to add to that, Pastor Phillip?
Man, to piggyback off what Pastor Adside said, first, thank you for this opportunity and this platform. But it shines a light on, and it kind of pushes us. I just finished a series with our church on teaching and adjusting our mindset and our ministries for the 21st century. Yeah. And God's kind of using this to push us out there, though we're feeling the effects of not being around our people, not the energy, doing Sunday morning services. It's teaching us, one, to elevate above that as preachers. It's teaching us to, hey, reach out to other folk who otherwise would not give you that same energy at the same time. It also extends our reach versus just the sanctuary, versus the few pews. It extends our reach to several people. When we look at the statistics of our live stream views, these things go on and on. So people get to see this, people who normally would not come to our services, people who live out of state. And so it has blessed us in many ways, but just to be quite frank, we want our people back. We want to see those faces.
No doubt. I totally agree with that, because it really, in a real sense, it's funny how these things kind of come together, because we wanted to shore up some things anyway, particularly in terms of technology and YouTube and all this kind of stuff. We wanted to shore up some stuff. We had already been planning on working it, and it's amazing how sometimes God can use a situation to push you to get some stuff done. And that's what I really found. You know, I mean, it pushes you, Doc. I mean, I literally, there were some things that we needed to get done and shore up and try to develop, and literally we had to get it done in like a couple weeks time, because we needed to make sure that we got the word out to the people, that we were consistent. And so I've been telling my people consistently, like, listen, there's good that's going to come out of this.
So true.
Indeed.
And that this is really kind of pushing us to destiny. It's pushing us into purpose. And if we don't have more, listen, if we never had time before to get after destiny and to get after purpose, we have it now.
True.
And so I'm grateful that, like, of course God is not behind the pandemic, but I believe that God is using this thing to really push us into really being more effective as leaders and being more effective in terms of making sure. And I like what you said, Adside, about ministering to all of the generations. That's so critical. And we're millennial pastors, and so it's not difficult for us to relate with millennials. It's not difficult for them to catch on. Even Generation X, right? We have that connection. Go ahead, Doc.
Pastor, one of the other things that I want to highlight, this learning experience, this learning curve for me. I'm only into 1 year pastoring. I'll celebrate 2 years here this year with the Lord's will, but it's taught me how to have a greater sensitivity for all of those 5 generations. I got a call just Sunday morning. I still go to the church on Sunday mornings and sort of there to administrate it, to connect with core leaders and that type thing, et cetera. And I got a call from one of the members and a text. She said, Pastor, I couldn't access the service. I haven't been able to access it for a few Sundays now. And so it takes a level of humility as well as sensitivity to realize that it's easy for me to click a button and be able to access it, but for other members, when I'm talking about reaching 5 generations, that is not that easy for them. Being able to connect them, connect the dots for them, and so God is teaching me how you have to be sensitive. You got to be sensitive with your media team, who is spending a whole lot of time listening to your demands and sort of trying to figure this thing out with you. You have to be sensitive to the fact that you have people on your worship team who perhaps struggle with already their own illnesses and their immune systems are not big. So it has taught me how to have a greater sensitivity.
That's good, man.
And guess what? And begin to listen. Because I have zeal and passion, but you're no greater or effective than the team that's around you.
That's facts.
It causes us to pay greater attention to the needs of the sheep. If we're going to be shepherds, we just can't be so caught up in just providing protection and providing meals for them and making sure they eat, making sure we're preaching, making sure we're doing Bible studies. But it teaches us to pay attention to the needs. Otherwise, we would not know, like, as you said, our worship leaders or our musicians who may have underlying conditions. Hey, I understand if you can't make it. I understand, if you can't do this. We understand the pressure that is on the media teams and the persons to make sure, hey, these services have to get out. Then we also feel at the same time, for those members who can't access it or need avenues or need ways, I'll never get this. But then we look at the beautiful side of it, folk who shun Facebook. I mean, we went through that when Facebook come out. Facebook was the devil. YouTube was the devil. I mean, I'm not getting on that Facebook, that MySpace and all that. And now they're on it. Pastor, I love it. I talked to my associate pastor who is 82 years old. He can read the text messages. He can't respond, but he will let me know. I caught you on Facebook.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
He will let me know. Hey, I enjoyed the word today. We had a few problems here and there, but I got it. I got it. So again, you have to see God in all of it.
So true.
You have to see God, and you have to see God teach. You have to be vulnerable as a pastor.
You
got to be vulnerable as a pastor. Hear me. You have to be vulnerable as a pastor to use this opportunity as a time of preparation and not a time of punishment. Because we can look at this as punishment and versus it's really preparing us for something greater.
It's preparing us really for destiny purpose, man. And that's not just for the pastors, that's for anybody. You know what I'm saying? And you said something that I really liked. One of my ministers, shout out to Elder Holt, he just turned 80. And to God be the glory. But he, I loved it because he made sure that our YouTube stuff was right. He doesn't have Facebook, but he called one of our ministers and said, hey, listen, I tried to get on YouTube. I said, yes, sir, Reverend.
80 years old.
80 years old. And we become sensitive to the need. Not only that, but you said something else. We have basically entered into a season where you have to be deeply appreciative, man.
So true.
You have to be deeply appreciative. These praise team, these media folk that keep coming out, making sure that we get the word out. I try to say thank you every service, man, because if it wasn't for the team, like you just said, you're only as sharp and as good as your team, man. So I'm grateful for that. That actually leads me into the next question, and this is where we're really going to get to like the nitty gritty of this conversation.
Let's go.
Particularly talking about really what pastors' hearts are feeling. Here it is. How has this impacted you personally as a pastor? I'll start with you, Pastor Philip. How has this impacted you personally as a pastor?
Personally, man, I'll say it like this. As pastors in general, we already have what someone called weird moments. We have idiosyncrasies. We have moments where we're preaching and we're pouring out and we're empty after. We're vulnerable. We're naked after. But do you still feel the same way? And the truth is, it's actually worse because now I poured out my heart not just to a congregation of a select few, but I poured out my heart to the entire world. This is not just Green Pasture looking at this. This is not just Millersville seeing this. And so being a preacher who's hard on himself, I am my wife will tell you I'm my worst critic.
I think we all
I'm
are.
going back and looking at the sermons. I want to be right. I want to be right. Sometimes it's Saturday night. And I'm still running the script. I can be completely prepared for Sunday, and 1, 2 in the morning, I'm like, did I think about this? And so if I want to prepare and I want to make sure I'm completely right, or I get God right. I don't want to miss God.
Facts.
I don't want to miss God in all of this.
Good.
And I want to make sure that what I'm giving out, the people are really getting it. So it affects you deeply, man. The fact that we can't touch our people. Pastors are shepherds. Shepherds connect with the sheep. You don't see the shepherd, feeding the sheep virtually. But now we're somewhat forced to do so. You don't see the shepherd protecting the sheep virtually. No, he has his rod and his staff. And so we can't see our folk. I don't care how much they text us, Pastor, we're doing good, we're doing fine. I want to see that. I need to see that. Sometimes as pastors, we can have those moments where we can look at our members, and I don't care how much they say, Pastor, I'm okay. We can see beyond that. We can see beyond that, and it's teaching us to feel in a different way, man. It teaches us to feel in a different way. You try not to get into those moments where you feel like, will this ever end? Will we get out of this? Will this be the same always?
You try to stay focused.
I tell my folk all the time, Pastor can't go home with you, so you got to read your Bible. You got to study, so you can be prepared. But now, I haven't even seen you on Sunday. I hadn't even seen you on Sunday. How do I know you're logging in to these services? And yes, that goes to your personal devotion, your personal relationship with God. But that's just as a pastor. As a father in the faith, you want to know that your members are getting it. You want to feel that your people are connecting with you, even if it's virtual.
That's good.
I remember mounting the pulpit and the first Sunday that we went virtually, and my honest, initial, blunt feeling was that a sense of loss. For the first time, I felt disconnected as a leader. I felt as though I was letting the people down, and also in a lot of contexts, letting God down. However, one of the things that encouraged me in the preaching moment, was to understand that from a biblical perspective, that God does his best work in times of crises. And so God shifted my focus and reminded me, Jarvis, I'm going to allow you to be more effective in this time of crisis than you've ever been in your life. It's something about chaos, darkness, and crisis that kills your ego. Then you get rid of a lot of the what I call, you become less self-conscious and become more God-conscious. And so after feeling the loss, I've got to go back to this, guys, because I love St. Luke. I began to put myself or see myself in the lens of 5 generations of people. What does that look like for my 70 to 80-year-old people who the only place they look forward to going now because their steps have gotten few? Eyesight has gotten a little dimmer. They look forward to going to Sunday school and church on Sunday. Can you imagine the loss? Can you imagine what they're feeling? But then you look at the young people, etc., who loves the ministry, who loves singing, who loves being in communal fellowship. When you so I began to put myself through all lens of the church, and it prepared me, watch this, for not only the preaching moment, but for everything we would do as it relates to our mission and our vision virtually. So here's what I said. There's somebody who's struggling because they can't get to St. Luke. now we have mental health ministry, but it's been dead.
Yeah.
Let's begin to activate some of those things. But again, so for me, feeling the sense of loss, but also, guys, I think you'll agree the importance to remain relevant. You know, if we're going to be preaching, we've got to mention that he's a God that can sustain in the midst of COVID.
Indeed.
You know, and sort of like, you know, there's a lot of things I can be saying, but the scripture is full of information and full of biblical narratives that you can lead your people and help them understand that I don't know the wind. I don't even know how, but I know who.
I know the who.
I don't know. I don't know who's gonna find the cure, but I know who. As a matter of fact, I've been preaching, guys, and I feel something here. I better. I'm telling you, I'm not looking to the counterfeit COVID.
Yes, sir, Doc.
But when you look through history and through the Bible, we were introduced to the real COVID years ago. He's Christ over viruses and infectious diseases.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, hallelujah.
Hey, Doc,
hallelujah.
Good, Doc. I like, hey,
hallelujah.
Hey, if y'all hear, hey, House of Homemaker, if y'all hear that, just act like y'all didn't hear this in that interview, all right? Listen, man, I totally identify with what you just said, Adside. Like, I felt burdened, Doc. You know, when we first decided, it shrunk, you know, in phases. You know, at first we decided not to go with, you know, but you had my ministers, because it was 50 and under, then it went to 10, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we had ministers, and I had the media team, praise team. So I didn't have my usual church, but I had a little talk background, you know what I'm saying? I had a talk background. Man, once I had to get the ministers out of there, all I had was the praise team and the media team. But the praise team held me down, Doc. You know, that was like my little crowd. Yeah. But then we had to go to a point where it was too risky to even bring the praise team every week. And so, you know, so every time it shrank, it felt like I got heavier and heavier. Yeah. The burden felt heavier and heavier. And I didn't. Yeah. Matter of fact, there was one time when I came in, and I think we recorded a service, and I literally just walked out of the pulpit, went straight to my office, and you know, was cleaning up. And one of my praise team people came to the office and said, Pastor, can you mind coming back out? And because it was something visibly wrong with me. Wow. And I mean, they could see it. They could see it on me. And I just came out here, man, and I just was transparent. I just said, man, I miss my people, man. Yeah. Like, I really miss. Yeah. It's not even just about the talk back energy from the church. I just miss the people. When you are called the pastor, and when you called the shepherd, like you said earlier, Reverend, like, you're used to being with your people. You're used to that line. You know, you're used to that line after church and talking to them, checking in on the kids and how's your mama doing. That is a big part of pastoring. The preaching and the teaching, a wise preacher. Our mother in ministry, rest in peace, she said the preaching and the teaching is 10 to 20%. Yeah. That's just 10 to 20%. Wow. It's the ministering to the people that carries the weight, and then the administration, which the people don't see. And so now we're still trying to do the administration of the church. We're still trying to keep the bills paid. We're still trying to make sure, you know what I mean, our teams are taken care of. We still try to make sure our staff is taken care of, but we don't get to see the people that we pastor. And that thing weighed heavy on me, and they prayed for me, and I was grateful for that. But you know, we miss our people, man. I know you wanted to comment. I'm sorry.
And it feels like in times, and I thought I had gotten over this, but sometimes it's still after that preacher moment. Am I fighting for God enough? Wow. Did I really allow them to just close the church like that? And we understand. I get it. I understand the seriousness of this virus. But when do we fight for God? When do we fight? When do we contend for the faith? But then God had to get me and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm fighting for you now. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And this moment, he has to shepherd the shepherds.
Yeah, so true. Wow.
You just said something.
We're shepherding blind. And so he has to shepherd the shepherds. He literally has to pull us and say, hey, come on. And so now when I'm preaching, like you said, it's not just about the amens and the talk back. You missed that. But now when I'm preaching, I'm literally in a space where it's me and God. Wow. And I'm hearing from God. I am literally hearing from God. When I'm preaching, my monitors are not even on. So it's going directly into the stream. And so I don't even know how I sound out there. Yes, sir. Until after it's done and I go back and looking like, I could have done that better. But then I realized this was a God moment. I was there with just me and God. Spirit, man. It teaches you how to just be with God. He is bringing us as pastors to another level that when we do return, it'll be a slap to his face to go back to the same way.
You about to take us right into our next question. But before we do that, Have y'all seen a couple of churches? I know, shout out to Pastor Gaines out there, and I believe in Kentucky. There is they've been putting the pictures.
A lot of churches. I've seen it this week
I
too.
started seeing it on social media.
Great idea.
Great idea. They're putting pictures of the people in the pews, and I thought that was interesting. But it just goes to show you how much pastors love their people and miss their people, and it's also forced us to really kind of nuance the way that we do. You know, I mean, you got to get on that phone, like you said, Adside earlier. Like you got to get on that phone. You got to check on your people. You got to call them, and I mean, you know, you can't just, you know, I have a wonderful congregational care minister and a congregational care team.
Yes, sir.
But the people want to hear from their pastor. You know what I mean? They don't mind hearing from the representative.
Indeed.
But they like, hey, I
like
want to hear from my preacher. You know what I mean? And so you know, it forces you led us right into the next question, and that's what I really want to. Let's kind of connect these two questions of how we're dealing with this personally. But what's the new normal? What is the new normal going to look like for our churches? And not just our churches, but we're talking abroad. What is the new normal going to look? Because this isn't normal. But you just said, like you just said, it would be a slap in the face if we went back to the same old thing.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? So what does the new normal look like in your context is what I'm asking. You can start with that, Adside.
For me, it's going to focus on two pillars or two key things that we are doing or that has been exposed for St. Luke, areas that we need. That's in communication and engagement. Communication and engagement. So again, making sure that all of our communication systems are in place to be able to reach, again, where? All 5 generations of the people that I serve. And so some of that is, how can we now embrace the power of conference calls for our older members, that you don't do it only in time of crisis, but you begin to offer them, because when you talk about new norm, how do you establish new norm? By repetition.
Yes, sir.
It becomes a part of culture, it becomes of your modern day. And so looking at some of these creative practices that we are doing and begin to do them over and over again. And so for engagement, we got to stay engaged, right? So even for me, who do not have a youth pastor, guess what I'm doing? I'm doing youth Bible study, teen Bible study.
Wow.
So all of that, again, looking at the technological advances through purchases and things we are doing and how they can begin to work. How can we begin to use our platforms for less of the Sunday morning lights, camera, and action stuff for dialogue, like what we are doing today? So continue to focus on communication and engagement on a more perpetual basis.
That's good. That's
Indeed,
facts.
indeed. One of the things we have to remember is we cannot undo what we're doing now. You have a lot who are going to consider, well, we don't need streaming now. We don't need to do anything online. But you've already begun to reach a number of people you would not otherwise reach. You would not otherwise be able to connect with. And so do you just cut them off once we go back into service? Do we just say, all right, you know what, we're not doing it? It's taught us to forget about budgets. It's taught us to, you know what, hey, we need to get it done. Either we're going to connect with our folk or not.
Right.
So let's go ahead and let's get it done. It's taught us to forget about that. Keeping the principles. Keeping the principles of who we are and why we're fellowship, why we're gathering together. That's what we do as Christians. We come together. We don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. But we cannot go back. I've seen, and this is shout out to every senior pastor who has never done a Facebook Live, have never done media ministry. My home pastor.
The real MVP, right?
They upgraded, Doc. They had to upgrade.
You know, he sent a message saying, hey, I need a Facebook. I need a flyer for it. I'm like, yo, it is weird to hear you talk like this. But now he's on social media. Now he's on Facebook. And what otherwise he would not do, pastor in 2 congregations, he's doing now faithfully every Sunday.
Wow.
And so you don't lose. And now he understands the power of it.
Wow.
Because he has members who had to move away for jobs and things of that nature.
But they're connecting with
and
the
now
ministry.
they said, Pastor, I haven't heard you preach in 10 years, 12 years,
Yep.
but I thank God I'm able to catch you now. So he says, you know what? Even when we go back, we're going to keep doing this.
Right.
We build off of this. We build off of this new principle to say, okay, hey, just as in the scriptures, the glory of the latter house is going to be greater than the former house.
Yes, sir.
If that is going to happen, we have to build off the platform that we have. It may be smaller. It may not look like what we used to have. It may not be. I mean, think about fellowship. How often do we fellowship in services on Sunday? That was a part of our regular service, but that may be changed forever on how we do that. But we build off of it. So it may not look the same, but God's glory, as long as His glory is there.
Yeah.
Romans 8 and 18 says, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory which is going to come after this."
Yes, sir, Doc.
I'm not trying to be too.
No, man, you good.
You just can't help yourself,
brother.
So,
you are a preacher, ain't you? Do what you do, man.
And so the simple fact of it is, if we focus on it, there's got to be glory after this.
There has to be, Doc.
God has to be present in this and after this.
Yes, sir.
We don't just need Him now. Faith doesn't say, "Hey, we just need God now."
Yeah.
Faith says, "Hey, we're going to need God even after this."
We need Him all the time, Doc. Now, past, present, and future, and that's facts. I agree, man. I mean, I totally just agree with what both of you guys said. I think it would be disrespectful if it did look the same.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, we need to continue to build on top of this, and particularly as it pertains to our church. We really had an opportunity and took time to really kind of develop some systems, and it's not, it's given us a moment to like really get after places where we need to shore up some things.
Wow.
I've been on the line with some of my executive ministers, and I'm a minister of assimilation. He's been calling me. I mean, you're talking about online community, building that out, building out, making sure our systems are in place. Because let's be clear. Now, those of you that don't know, again, the preaching and teaching is a very small percentage of what we do.
So true.
But a large part of what we do is systems, culture.
Yes.
I speak culture to my people all the time. I've been doing it since I got to this church. And shout out to House of Hope Macon Nation. I'll be celebrating a year here, a little over a year here in just a week or so. And so, like, the thing is culture, man, a culture of love and a culture of excellence. And I try to repeat. I stay in that vein, man, because and this has given my people time to say, "Pastor, you said this on live, but we don't have it in place. So I'm working to get it in place right now." I'm like, if you're gonna put it out there, Doc, you got to make sure you have it.
That's what we call vision.
That's vision, Doc. And so, and Doc, it's been encouraging in a sense. Of course, we miss our people, but it's been encouraging in a sense because it's actually given us time to say, no, we need to get this right before we come back, before the people come back. We need to make sure this is tight and that's how you build culture. You know what I mean? Through repetition, like you said earlier, through repetition, through teaching, but also through shoring up systems. And I've learned that in a very significant way.
Did you guys find this perspective, and it just hit me when you was talking, how also during this time of learning, as I call it, that you really begin to see or begin to really gauge where you are with God as a leader. And what I mean by that, because, we have vision night, right? And we lead the church in the vision. How much of our vision casting or being led by God really speaks to the time that we in now? And so for me at St. Luke, it was almost prophetic because members are saying now, or leaders, "Pastor, you've been trying to implement that. You've been trying to get us." And so you talked about as leaders, God began to show. He begins to fight for you. See, our work as a leader has not got easier in a sense of our level of creativity. But it should, for me, I said, let me say this, it's gotten easier because I don't have to fight because I've been led by Him. I've been hearing His voice all along. So every meeting I go to, I've been pushing excellence. I've been pushing communication. I've been pushing engagement. And so now the light bulb is going off, and it's easier for me to sit back and say, "God, just do your thing." Doing this thing.
Because the people are catching the vision.
They're catching
just because of the
Pastor,
season
you
that
said this. Let me make this happen.
That's it. It's amazing. I was arrested in a similar fashion. Our theme every year, we're doing a theme that kind of puts our focus in perspective. It was the year of responsibility. Then it was the year of follow through. It was the year of discipline and these things and all of that. And so this year, 2020, in fact, 2020, and for at least the next 5 years, I told our ministry, for at least the bare minimum for the next 5 years is simply doing it God's way.
Wow.
And God's like, "Well, you did want to do it my way, huh?" Your way is doing it every Sunday morning in
the way you were doing it.
But God said, "Okay, let me do it my way." I can't do it God's way. We have to let God take control.
Facts.
We have to let God do it His way. And simple fact is, His ways are not ours.
Yes, sir.
So it's going to seem odd. It's going to seem weird. But what do you do when God seems odd? We just got to keep trusting Him. We got to keep holding on. Say, "All right, God, I done preached it. I've said it.
You just said something.
I gotta hold your hand if I'm gonna preach it to the people.
So true.
Yeah, Doc. My overseer, Dr. Edu. Shout out to Dr. Edui Smith Jr.
Yes,
sir.
Great leader. Great leader.
Yes, sir. He preached a sermon. My favorite sermon that he ever preached was a sermon called "When God Is Odd." Oh,
wow.
Man. And
yes.
I mean, I'm talking.
Tell us about it a little bit, Reverend. You got
I mean, first of all, he walked the text, and he. Doc, you just gotta go on YouTube.
I got
and check
you.
out
All
that
right,
sermon,
all right,
Doc.
all
I mean,
right.
that thing.
I'll send you the link.
I would
send me
be.
the link,
It would be disrespectful if I even
Detroit,
tried to summarize that thing. But he preached that when God is odd, and sometimes it looks like God is doing everything else somewhere else. But when it gets to where you are, God is switching it up. But God is switching it up for a reason. God is kind of reorganizing things for a reason. Like you just said, Pastor Philip, I had been talking to my congregation. Our theme for the year is radical faith, which is just crazy, right? Yeah. Because we need radical faith in this.
We need it.
Listen, you can't just operate by some old ordinary, mundane faith right now. We need radical faith. Yeah. But also, I've been talking about this is your definition year. The Lord put that in my spirit back in January, that this is your definition year. And it's amazing because God is defining us, and I believe that what we engage, where we put our energy in this year is going to define the next 10 years of our lives. Yeah. And it's amazing that God has kind of cleared out some stuff. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. That God has kind of cleared out some stuff out to say, okay, now you wanted to get after that business plan, get after it. You working on business stuff right now, Adside. You wanted to write that book, right?
Hallelujah.
Get after those chapters, man. I mean, I'm telling you, it's insane how God has provided a lane even in the midst of a pandemic.
Watch this, Pastor Howard. We look at, okay, our churches are empty. But sometimes we cannot do what needs to be done until we clean some stuff out. Mm-hmm. If anything I'm learning about God, he's teaching me how to be a better person, a better preacher, and a better pastor through my children. Mm-hmm. I have 2 boys.
Oh, wow. That's good.
I have 2 boys, a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. Y'all pray for me.
You're busy, Doc. You're busy.
I'm very busy. They're loving the fact that me and the mother and I are home all the time, so they're playing. But we cannot get the family room clean the way we want it to be, or at least me, because I can be a real big neat freak, but we can't get the place as clean as we want it until we move them out. Wow. We have to take them out, because as long as we let them stay in, the more we clean up, they're gonna pull something back down. Yep. We already got in our mind how we want that family room to look, how we want that family room to feel and clean, and sometimes God has to clean house, even with the good folks.
So true.
Even with the good folk, he has to just say, all right, everybody get out. Yep. Now let me do this. And it could be his way of breaking our mentalities.
Yes, sir.
Breaking our, and this is not for the folk who are quick to say, you know what, you don't have to go to church to have a relationship with God. That's not what the scriptures say. It tells us to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. But sometimes God got to take us out the assembly of ourselves, our mentality. Sometimes we only congregate because we want to,
well, Pastor,
or because we feel we have to.
I want to interject here and to be accountable as brothers to each other. When we talk about not forsaking the assembling of ourselves, I think that we would be doing ourselves in this time together injustice if we don't deal with the fact that prior to coronavirus, we entered into the technology age, as well as the age of self. That men literally was becoming lovers of themselves.
Yes.
As I began to engage and look
that's why some folk come.
As I began to look at that movie Power, I think about that power was in churches. And so that's why churches could not then be absent from this thing that God allowed, because he's sovereign. He could have stopped it at any time. He said, no, I'm going to allow this thing. Remember? Yep. And so it affected church. But we have to also deal with the technology age and the age of self, that there are going to be a population of people who had already begun to do church virtually and at home. Yeah. We're going to lose the physical aspect or the social aspect of ministry to a lot of people. Right. And I don't want us that it might be worth conversation having.
It is.
And so our systems that we keep talking about, and as we embrace where we are as a 21st century ministry church, this is why it's going to be important to keep doing what you guys said. You cannot go back for the people. I've got people now that are giving again to our ministry who are not members simply because we have more systems and things in place. So I'm not looking for all of my members to come back on a regular basis.
And I know you're asking the questions, Pastor Howard, but this is a question that's prevalent to us. How do we handle discipleship?
If my people who are called by my name. Listen, we've been quoting that, but I've got to move because we just entered into We've been entered into a different phase. But
that's it. About a month ago.
Here's what the Lord told me.
That thing.
He said, with 9/11, we did one thing. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. There was a lot of praying. But the other part of that, there was no turning.
No turning.
And so when normalcy went back, right, because the term literally means to turn your back on whatever reared you away.
Yes,
okay, so with what we need, our prayers have got to be, Father, allow that scripture to become embedded in our hearts and our minds, that in this season we just don't call on you, but that we turn to you.
We do some turning too, Doc.
We actually seek you.
God said to me when I was in prayer about 3 weeks ago with my mama, God said to me, I got ready to get on my knees, and I'll admit I haven't been using my platform to really speak to the people as a leader and as a prophet of God. What is God declaring in the midst? Well, God had some strong words for me. A few seconds into my prayer, he said, son, you like all the other people across the world who are seeking my hand and not my heart. You are crying out to me in times of crisis. Where were you last week? Why didn't you know this thing was about to take place? He began to tell me there was a lot of seeking, but there was not a lot of turning. And so I want to caution us that we have to stay in the vein that even though we don't allow the aids of self to allow us to become less God conscious.
Indeed.
But God says, I would never do nothing in the earth. I believe the whole scripture, unless I reveal it to my servants, the prophet. You're not a prophet because you can wear a chains and a backward collar. I'm sorry.
Man, it's amazing that, you know what, I think what's most valuable that I've kind of drawn from this season is that God reminded us that this building is not the church.
Hallelujah.
I think that's the most valuable thing. I've been saying it repetitively over and over whenever we record or go live or whatever have you, that the church is where the people are.
My God.
The church is in that living room where you are, the
Teaching
church
us
in
how
that
to be the
kitchen, or that even if you in bed and you just rolled over and got on live, that church is right there.
So true.
The church is not the four walls of our buildings, man. You know what I mean? Our buildings house the church. Our buildings house this isn't the church. The church doesn't come alive until the people show up.
Yes,
My
sir.
goodness.
Yes,
He's just as good outside as he is
Doc.
inside.
Absolutely, Doc. And God reminded us that these buildings, that the pomp and circumstance of our buildings and all of that, that's cool, but that's not the church. The church is where the people are. When y'all's members are in Publix or Kroger, the church is in Publix.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying?
So
and that, I think God very much blessed me with that understanding and reminded me, like, you're still preaching to the church wherever they are, wherever they're streaming, and the church is alive wherever my people are.
So true.
Yeah, man. I want to go back to just kind of talking about how we deal with this personally before we wrap everything up. How have you been able, because we talked about the burden of missing our people and the burden of really trying to reorganize and restructure the way that we do things because we want to make sure that we're ministering to the people of God. But how do you get motivation? How do you get encouragement? What is the impetus for you to continue to get up and pull yourself in front of that camera and with an empty sanctuary and preach your heart out and teach your heart out, whatever it is that you have to do, make those phone calls? What ministers to you? What ministers to you in this season?
One of the things that I realized is that from my birth, while I was an embryo and a fetus in my mother's womb, God had a plan for my life.
Facts.
Yeah.
And so his plans are not just for me in times of convenience or in times where I feel like I'm at my best. I am equipped to lead St. Luke and all those that will hear God's voice through me during this time of crisis. So what keeps me motivated is knowing that somebody is depending on me. Yeah. They're depending on my influence. They're depending on the God in me. And so if I close my mouth in this season or be moved, do you know that there are a lot of Christians who have already denounced God when they had to look at their baby die of COVID? They looked at their mamas and their daddy. How can a loving God allow this to happen? I made up in my mind, I want to identify. It was Job's wife who said, you need to do what? Curse him and die. No, and here's what I've said, that God, I want to be like those leaders or those heroes in the Word who trusted you just not when times were going well. Yeah. So my motivation is knowing that there are people depending on me, that they're depending on me to stay strong and to help them continue to give a word. God does his best speaking in times like we are now.
Sir, Doc.
That's mutual.
From a spiritual standpoint, but from a natural standpoint, what motivates me to keep me going, I don't like where we are in terms of engagement that I'm seeing every week. That's a natural side. So I'm going back every week looking at our systems. How can we tighten it up? If I've had 50 people on a Bible study call, I need to be at 100 next week. And so I'm staying motivated in a sense because that's the spiritual. I gave you the spirit. The natural piece of that is gauging our level of engagement and communication. And you can do that in a whole lot of ways. So those are some of the things that
That's
I'm doing.
good stuff.
Loving that, and on that, also look at the fact God didn't have to call me. He can shut my mouth today.
Hallelujah.
And have somebody ready to do and say what he told me to say in the next 5 minutes.
So true.
And so I wake up every day, whether I'm preaching or whether I'm recording, I wake up every day thanking God for the fact that he's given me a voice in this season. He's given me a voice. I could be like everybody else, needing to hear from somebody, wanting to hear, questioning God. But I thank God for the fact that he speaks to me.
Yes, Lord.
That I can still hear from God. And that's the most important thing. Can we really hear from God?
Yeah.
Trusting in the voice of God, leading us to preach what we're preaching, to tell our folk what we're telling, to lead our folk blind.
Wow.
With open hearts. We're shepherding with blind eyes, but open hearts.
Wow.
We don't know. There is no certainty.
That is.
There is no certainty of this virus.
So true.
There is nothing absolute. Even the CDC is still baffled. They're trying to figure out now whether it's man-made or whether it's an actual disease that's generated through animals. But the only certain thing we have is God.
So true.
And so if I can't lean on and depend on God, if I can't trust to hear from God, what is there to life?
So true.
And so I wake up every morning, as you said, knowing somebody needs me, but knowing God is speaking to me.
Yes, sir. Wow.
And if he's thought enough to put something in me, who am I to hold it?
Yes, sir.
I have to say it. I have to speak it. Because if I don't, he's going to use somebody else.
Facts.
Wow.
Facts.
He's going to use somebody else. So it may as well be me. I may as well be the voice for him.
Yeah.
I have a family. I still have to lead that family. My family has to see me lead, even in an hour like this.
My God.
That's good.
I'm a business owner. I'm a pastor. You know, my wife and I, we both work, so we're affected in this as well. But how do we hold steadfast in this hour? As you said, it's radical faith, man.
Yeah, radical faith.
Not safe. But
Radical
radical, not common sense,
but
radical faith.
This ain't the time for bougie faith, y'all. This is the radical faith.
No, this
you feel me?
Radical faith. This is Davidic faith. When we're standing before Goliath, knowing I share with my wife like this: would we allow our 3-year-old son to go out and stand against a giant, stand against a mass? A guy that's out there shooting up everybody with a gun, and he's out there with a slingshot saying, God told me, we'd be like, get your butt back in the house.
Yep, true.
But radical faith says, hey, I know God is on my side.
Your tone changes, Reverend.
I know God is with me. And even though it looks like 3 slingshots, I see God in this. So we have to see God in all.
Yes,
and that's the motivation. That's all I need.
Yeah, man.
That's all I need is to know that God is still there.
Yeah, man. I just... You know, what motivates me is the fact that that the Lord is allowing me to work in purpose.
Yeah.
When I wake up, even when I don't feel like it, Doc, I'm grateful because this is what I was born to do. This is what I was born to do. And when you're born to do something, you can't do anything else. Wow. This is what you do.
This is who we are.
I could, but I would never be comfortable.
Wow.
And so even in tough seasons, I realized, God, you've blessed me to be able to live in my purpose. That's why I just try to encourage so many other people to just walk in your purpose and walk in the destiny that God called you to do, because you're going to get joy even in the hard days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even in the tough days,
still smile.
you find joy in the fact that, but this is my purpose.
Yes, sir.
I can't see myself doing anything else. This is who I'm called to be.
Yeah.
And, Jesse Jackson once, we're going to go to our final question, but Jesse Jackson once said something to my bishop. Shout out to my pastor, Bishop C.E. Glover in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yes, sir.
He told my bishop one time that he came to town and the next morning he had an early flight out, very early. And they had stayed out late hanging out, got something to eat. And the bishop said, hey, man, you need us to, we'll call the hotel and make sure you get a early morning wake-up call. And Jesse Jackson said, I don't need no alarm. Purpose wakes me up in the morning.
My God.
He said, destiny wakes me up in the morning. He said, I don't need a wake-up call. Destiny wakes me up in the morning. And when I heard him say that, Doc, that's always stuck with me, man.
Yes, sir.
Destiny gets me out of bed.
God.
Yes.
Purpose gets me out of bed. Purpose gets me to this pulpit. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes,
and so I mean, I think we're all kind of saying the same things. Like, it's purpose, man.
It's purpose.
When you're purpose to do it, you don't want to do anything else, even during the hard seasons.
You don't want to do anything
even
else.
During the hard seasons.
Even
man.
when it's
I'm appreciating
easier.
this conversation, man.
That'll work. That'll work.
And the danger, let's deal with the other side for 30 seconds, because I feel where we are. The danger, God takes purpose so serious.
Yeah, man.
That he cursed the fig tree because the fig tree
He wasn't working his purpose.
It had leaves, but no fruit.
Mankind, only thing I've ever asked you to do was praise and worship me.
Yeah.
And if you can't get it right and build as an infrastructure, I'll take you back to the place.
Man, I told our folks, we had one drive-in service, and we've been trying to do a drive-in service ever since, but the weather has not permitted us to be on the drive-through.
Right.
And it shifted. We were just going to come out and have a little praise and worship. I was going to preach. We would go home. Still had some kind of tangibility there where we could see the preacher. We could see our members. They were blowing their horns. And out of nowhere, the attitude, the atmosphere shifted on the parking lot.
My God.
And God spoke and said, hey, if we can't do it out here, there's no need to go back and do it in there.
Yeah, Doc, that's good.
But why did you think that? We're having a conversation.
It's just,
but tell me, why do you think that happened? Just seriously. Understand, most theologians would say that Jesus' ministry, we know it was what, 3 years. 30 years he was in training, which speaks to all of this microwave society that God got tired of.
Doc. That's good stuff.
He got tired of all the microwave stuff. But he says, I was spent my 3 years of ministry, but wait, theologians would suggest, or they would argue, that most of Jesus' ministry was not in buildings.
No.
86 to 92% of his ministry was where? Outside of the four walls of the church.
God,
so have you ever thought about why the glory of God allowed that moment to shift?
Head,
because you start reminding God of what the intent, the original purpose of what the church is supposed to be.
He was a homeless evangelist, Doc.
Why? Don't do it. Don't do it, Reverend. Foxes have whole birds. Don't do that, Reverend.
Man.
I can flow with you, Reverend. Don't do that. Yes, sir.
Is there an organist?
Tell your name.
We need a hoop triggers or something, because
y'all know we can't help ourselves.
We can't help ourselves.
You
Listen,
preachers
man.
like this together, y'all know we can't help it. Listen, let's wrap this thing up, y'all, before we get up dancing up in here somewhere. Y'all know that in the state of Georgia, in which we pastor, and we know some other states that it's going on in your states as well. Some governors are starting to lift some of the bans. They're starting to lift some of the shelter in place. Now, it's only for select businesses, hair salons, nail salons, some other things, but we obviously see that this thing is they're trying to begin to open this thing back up in phases. And now my thing is this, I believe it's premature, me personally.
Indeed.
I believe that it's premature. I believe that we still need probably another good month on shelter in place. And I believe we need at least a month in the vein that we're operating in. And I know that it's affecting small businesses like yours, Pastor Phillip, and people are. It's a money grab. They want to kind of get the economy going again. Obviously, I mean, we know that number 45. His presidency is on the line. Particularly, we know he mishandled the pandemic. But now he has to get the economy rolling again, especially going into November, which is election season. So, what is your take on how we are as churches? Number one, what's your take on this shelter in place citywide, and how long we think it needs to continue to go? And secondly, how that's going to affect the way our churches open back up. Are we looking at our churches opening back up in phases as well?
Got you.
That's a good, I think we need to be really kind of conscious of that. I don't know if we thought about that thoroughly.
I'll go first, and I want to be very practical. I want to be very practical, and here's what I want to say. I want to caution all of us to face the facts about COVID-19.
Okay.
Let's start here. We know that this virus that has hit our earth, has hit the earth, we know that we don't have a cure for it.
Correct.
That's a fact, right? The other thing that we know, that when you look all across the world, but let's bring it more intimate. Let's talk about Macon and Bibb County. We know that our numbers are still doing what? going up.
Yep.
Same
Going
for
up.
Millersville. Same
We
for
know that in order to stop the spread of the virus, that we have been encouraged to do what? Follow the guidelines of the CDC and our governor, and really give ear to the whole social distancing piece. Now, I'm gonna let these brothers continue. I just want to be practical. If you look at those three areas, we don't have a cure.
I ain't got nothing else to say.
The numbers are still growing. We are encouraging social distance. How in the world can anybody with common sense, really, when you look at the governor's comment, and I hope I'm not going too far, Reverend Howard, I'm in your house, but I think it's an insult. I think it's an insult on our intelligence.
Facts.
It is an insult to all of us who identify with common sense. It does not make sense for you to open up salons or whatever the case may be for your own personal gain. I can talk about capitalism. I can talk about what it means. The other thing that I want to say this, and I'll be remiss if I don't. The statistics are clear that when you look all around the world, African Americans are affected by this socially, economically, and even as it relates to the most vulnerable population or race that is dying to this. I want to encourage you, my brothers and sisters, all across the world, all across the body of Christ, but I also want to say to us, let's be smarter. Put the facts on the table, and here's what I believe. You can't argue with facts. It's too early. I have no plans on opening back up St. Luke or any institution so we can bring further harm to ourselves. That devil is a liar.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. It's a sacrifice of society for the economy's sake.
Yeah. Yep. It's economic grab.
It really is. When our political leaders or the political powers that be say to us, Georgia, the state of Georgia, let's not deal with any other state, but the state of Georgia has not begun to reach its peak, at least not until May 1st. Right. And then you come back and you contradict what you say and say, you know what, instead of all that, we're going to open back up. But look at what you're opening up, the highest places of contact.
Wow.
I'm a barber. I can't cut anybody's hair from 6 feet away.
This is what I've been saying. How do you practice social distancing and you standing right over me, man?
Do it from 6 feet away.
The nail man right in front of you, man.
Practical.
This practical.
Here is my take.
It's ridiculous.
Obviously, the coronavirus, COVID-19, is not as bad as they said it is, and the numbers are trumped up, or it really is dangerous, and you're trying to do more harm to the society.
That's
now, which one is it?
That's it. That's it.
Which one is it?
Which
one? Have you been feeding us a lie?
Yep.
Or is it really as bad? Because if it's really as bad, then what you're doing is not safe.
So true.
It is not safe. You're looking at the highest places: a tattoo parlor, a massage parlor, nail salons. These places cannot function without touching. They can't function with 6 feet. Even if you space out the clients, even if you wash, there is still contact.
So true.
Let's put this into mind. They think it's airborne.
So true.
Some have said it is, some have said it's not. But if it is airborne, how, let me use my words.
Put it together, Reverend.
How in the world
You're going to need your job after this.
can we possibly go back into the world and think it's okay?
Yeah, so true. It's premature. It's
in the words of my grandmother, don't you leave out that house. Green Pasture, I'll see you either on the parking lot or we'll have virtual worship experience.
Right. That's right.
I want to see you.
That's right.
But I don't want to see you at a graveside, and I don't want to see you at nobody's funeral home.
So true.
I want to see you when it's time to come back. I want to hug you. I want to love on you.
Yes.
But I'll do it, and I'll wait to do it until it's safe to do so.
That's right.
Yeah. I got faith. I have faith. I believe. I trust in God. But at the same time, we cannot sacrifice society at the cost of our profit.
So true.
St. Luke, Green Pasture, and House of Hope Macon on the same order, Doc. We are not opening our churches prematurely.
No.
For the sake of tithe and offering, or for the sake of us having just getting back to church. No. We care about our people way too much.
We care.
And I put this on Facebook yesterday when the announcement came down. I said, there's no way. Yeah. There's no way that I would ever prematurely open the church back up for the sake of having church.
True.
We are charged with, and we are charged with the holistic well-being of our people.
So true.
Mind, body, and spirit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We're not just charged with speaking to the spirit of to the spirit,
indeed,
man.
Indeed.
We're charged with helping people with their mental health.
True.
We're charged with helping people with their physical health.
Yeah.
That's why we go see them in the hospital. That's why we go visit them when they are sick.
Indeed.
God does, listen, man, I don't believe God is pleased with this thing, man, with this economic grab, because here's the thing, Adside and Philip, we're going to end up back in quarantine.
So true.
I mean, you laid out the practicality of it, and it's a done deal. The numbers are going up.
Yep.
Why would you start opening things back up and numbers are still spiking? And like you said, we might not even be at our peak yet. Why would you open things back up? It's just absolutely asinine to me. It's irresponsible. And I'm praying, and I hope, and I know we've all kind of reached out to some of our political leaders.
Sir.
I've called the mayor. Yep. I'm like, listen, I know that locally you can't go against what the governor, has decreed.
We can speak out,
but you can speak out.
Yep.
Just like shout out to Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta.
Yes.
She came out immediately and said, no, this is irresponsible. And people need to continue to stay at home. Listen, we know you need that paper. We know that $1,200 might not be going too far. I know you've been buying groceries every other day. And shout out to all of the essential workers out there who risk their lives every day to make sure that we have food and protection and are ministering to people, doctors and nurses. But man, the bottom line is, if we don't take our time with phasing things out, if we don't take our time, we're going to be right back where we are right now.
Remember, I want to encourage more so leaders like us, spiritual leaders or leaders, remember that Satan's desire is to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yes, sir.
And if we are not careful, Satan will use this opportunity to come in and make a spectacle out of the church in a negative light. Yeah. I don't want it to be said that St. Luke gathered and I was responsible for several lives dying. Do you realize how terrible that is? That's terrible news. That's a horrific sight. But if we are leading and if we're walking by feelings and not by faith, then a lot of us are going to fall prey and fall right into the hands, right into the hands of deceit that is in our government. I do agree with you that we got to stay. Leaders back in the day, they weren't confined to the building. They stood up for this is a social justice issue. Yeah. And we need to come together. I hear people saying, let's come together and let's do revivals. No, let's stand and talk about the facts. Let's deal with the facts that we need every ministry to really stand, every leader to begin to stand. Cry loud and spare not. Yes, not just don't lift up your voice for Jesus, but stand against these systematic systems of bigotry
and oppression. Yeah, man.
It's nothing new, but listen, we're the voices now. We got to stand up.
And look, we get it. I honestly get it. The economy has to move forward. We're watching the bottom fall out. But do we risk that at the sake of life?
Yeah, man.
What do we value more? What do we value our gas prices?
We know what America.
Do we value the profit from the economy?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. It usually takes me $80 to fill up, and it was like $40, and I thought something was wrong.
I thought something was wrong, God. I said that.
We bless God, but do we profit the world?
Yeah.
Over the lives of the people we love and the people we cherish. What profit a man to gain the whole world and turn around and lose his soul? I can't sell out just because I need $1. I can't sell out. You have a lot of business.
Can't sell the people out.
You can't sell the people out.
That's right.
You still have a lot of businesses that still don't have the funding to open back up.
Right.
And so how do we respond to that? We don't demonize anybody who chooses to go back to work.
True.
I don't demonize anybody for, just standing out and say, you know what? Well, my fate says something different and God's going to protect me here. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm praying for you. I'm praying that nothing will come against you, that you won't be infected. Amen. You won't get sick. I am blessing God in advance for you. But as for me and my house, we're going to be on the couch for a few more weeks.
That's good, Pastor. Listen, Pastor, we got to wrap this thing up, man. We just appreciate everybody for locking in. If you both of you could just take it about 20 seconds, if you can just give an encouraging word to all of the pastors and preachers and anybody who might be listening to this broadcast.
Listen, I want to say to pastors and preachers alike, I just want to share with you that I join you in the fight in trying to lead God's people through COVID-19 as well as through these times of uncertainty. I want you to remember that Scripture says He's the same God today, yesterday, and forevermore. And so I want to encourage pastors to continue to minister to your people on whatever platform you have. You might don't have platforms to do what we're doing today, but remember that God is going to hold you accountable and responsible for getting the word out. And so you continue to do that. You continue to be an encouragement to your people. Here's what I want to say, though, in a general or in a broader perspective. I'm talking to somebody today who always maybe identify like me as the underdog. Life has happened for you. Could it be that God has allowed the onspread of this virus to hit the reset button of your life? Talking to a marriage who's struggling. You was ready to throw the wedding ring away. You were in a place of being done. God has now almost forced you into conversation and intimacy again because God wants to rekindle the fire and the love of your marriage. I'm talking to a business owner who had ran out of strategies. You had no more, it did not make sense for you in a literal perspective to get another loan or to do anything. Could it be that God has you in a season of rebranding and re-strategizing, that he's going to allow you to do more connecting with resources than you've ever done before? I prophesied that over somebody's life. I'm talking to individuals in this time who was at a critical place in your life. I'm also, could it be for you, some of you leaders, could it be that God gave you a second wind? You was ready to put the padlocks on the door and walk away from ministry. It was no more fulfilling for you. God has a way of doing what he does even when we don't know. God is working behind the scene. Listen, at the age of 31, I've seen God do more than this pandemic than I've ever seen him do. I want you to be encouraged. Know that God is still on the throne. You don't need to panic. Have faith. Keep your hope and your expectation. Look for God to do his best work during these times. God bless you.
That's good. That's good.
Amen. God bless you. Well, I'm reminded simply of this in Genesis chapter 1, that it was in the darkness. It was in the darkness that the Spirit of God was hovering over the earth. And what I learned about God, he does his best work in the dark. God does his best work in times like these and moments of chaos when things are not seeming like they're just coming together, when things seem like they are falling apart. God does his best work, and he does it so we can know that he's God. He does it so that we can go to him. He'll do it so we can go and run and seek his face. The same thing happened when he waited 4 days to go see Lazarus. He didn't do it because it's something he wanted to do. He said it's not unto death, but it's unto the glory of God. And so whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen, whatever it is, leaders, whether you are a political leader, whether you are a religious leader, you are a pastor, and you feel like, you know what, this thing is dead, this thing is done. I want to tell you, it's not unto death, but it's for the glory of God. Use this moment, use this opportunity to allow God to lead you. So often we can be caught up in leading, we forget to be led. Wow. So many times we can get caught up in the administration and the paperwork, and we forget to spend time with God ourselves. I encourage you, I dare you to just get in God's presence, spend a little time with God, seek his face, and watch God turn the things around for you. Same thing he did in Ezekiel chapter 37. He carried the prophet out into a valley of dry bones, and he told him, you prophesy, you preach. I know it looks dead. I know it looks rough. I know it's dry. But if you just preach, if you just do what I say, whether you are a religious leader or political leader, you can still do what the Lord says. And God will cause restoration. He's a God of preparation, he's a God of provision, and he's also a God of protection. I love you. God bless you.
Thank you, man. Thank you, beloved brothers. To God be the glory, man. Listen, y'all motivated me today, man. Y'all ministered to me today, and so I appreciate that. And we want to say to all pastors and preachers, all leaders, that listen, we have to, this isn't a time for competition. So this isn't a time for that kind of stuff. This is a time for leaders to really come together more of this. To minister to one another. And so I'm just grateful to God for Pastor Jarvis Adside, pastor of St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church right here in Macon, Georgia. You can follow him on all of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. He would love to connect with you. I thank God for my beloved brother, Pastor Charles Phillip. He pastors the Green Pasture Baptist Church of Millersville, Georgia. You can connect with him as well. And he's a phenomenal, literally, he's a phenomenal graphic designer. He just does so many different kinds of, boy, you got so many businesses. I need to buy into one of them. But listen, man, this has encouraged me. We pray that it has encouraged you. We love you so much. We thank God for you. We got to let you go, but you can always connect with your boy at JC Howard Speaks on Instagram and Twitter, JC Howard on Facebook. And listen, you can always check out the St. Luke Church, the Green Pasture Church, or even House of Hope Macon Church. To God be the glory for the wonderful things he's done. And don't forget, spread love every day, everywhere you go, and everywhere you can. Peace. We're out of here.